The auction block stood crude and weathered under the merciless frontier sun. Traders and buyers alike gathered, their faces hardened by years of survival in a land that forgave nothings. Among the day's merchandise stood a young woman, her swollen belly visible despite the rough sack covering her head. The auctioneer started the bidding at $1, drawing cruel laughter from the crowd. No one wanted a pregnant slave, just another mouth to feed. Then silence fell as a shadow stretched across the platform. A giant Apache warrior stepped forward, his face unreadable, a single silver dollar in his outstretched hand. The transaction complete, he led her away by a rope. Would this be her salvation or something far worse? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The giant Apache led her away from the auction grounds, the coarse rope between them maintaining a measured distance. Beth stumbled occasionally, her swollen belly and the sack still covering her head, making each step treacherous. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, though she could only feel its heat through the rough burlap. After what seemed like hours, the rope went slack. Large hands, surprisingly gentle, removed the sack. Beth squinted against the sudden light, her first clear view of her purchaser stealing her breath. He stood well over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered and imposing, yet his eyes held none of the cruelty she'd come to expect from men. Without a word, he offered a water skin. "Drink," he said, his voice deep but quiet. The single word carried an accent, but his English was clear. Beth hesitated before thirst overcame fear. The water was cool and clean, nothing like the stale, gritty liquid she'd been allowed at the trader's camp. "Where are you taking me?" she finally managed, her voice hoarse from disuse. The Apache pointed northwest toward distant mountains. Home, he gathered wood for a small fire as dusk approached, his movements efficient and practiced. That night, Beth lay awake, the rope now secured to a nearby tree. Her hand rested protectively over her unborn child as she studied her captor, or was he her rescuer, through the firelight. His face remained impassive as he worked a piece of leather with a small bone tool. When deep night fell and his breathing slowed in sleep, Beth untied the loose knot at her wrist. Freedom beckoned beyond the firelight. She gathered her skirts and crept away, heart thundering in her chest. The moonlight provided just enough illumination to avoid the worst obstacles, but her pregnancy and weakened state soon left her breathless and dizzy. She managed perhaps a mile before her legs gave out. Collapsing against a boulder, Beth wept silently, cradling her belly. "I'm sorry, little one," she whispered. "I don't know what to do." The sound of approaching footsteps made her freeze. The Apache appeared like a shadow, his expression unreadable in the darkness. Beth shrank back, arms crossed protectively over her middle, waiting for the blow, the rage. It never came. Instead, he crouched before her, offering the water skin again. After she drank, he simply lifted her into his arms, as though she weighed nothing, carrying her back to camp in silence. By morning, Beth studied him with new confusion as he prepared a simple meal. He pushed a wooden bowl toward her, filled with some kind of grain porridge. "Eat," he said. "Baby needs strength." Her hand trembled as she accepted the food. "Why?" she asked, the question encompassing everything she couldn't articulate. Why buy her? Why not punish her escape? Why show kindness? The Apache looked at her for a long moment, seeming to consider his words carefully. "I am Maka," he said, instead of answering. "Iron Bear to white men." Beth swallowed hard. "Elizabeth Harrison." Beth. Maka nodded once, acknowledging her name. He pointed to her belly. "When?" 2 months, maybe less," she whispered, the familiar fear returning. What would happen when the baby came? "We reach my winter camp before snow. Safe there." As they continued their journey that day, Beth noticed the rope hung loose in his hand, no longer tied to her wrist. A test, perhaps. or recognition that she had nowhere else to go. The mountains loomed larger now, their peaks already dusted white. That evening, watching him methodically prepare their camp, Beth gathered her courage. "Were you ever going to tell me why you bought me?" Mackie's hands stilled. The silence stretched so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. "No person should be sold like cattle," he said, looking into the distance. "I know what it is to be properties." With those words, the frayed rope between them took on new meaning, not a tether of ownership, but the first fragile strand of understanding. 3 days into their journey, the silence between them had developed a rhythm of its own. Beth found herself watching Macca's hands as he worked, strong, scarred hands that moved with surprising grace. Whether skinning a rabbit or gathering kindling, he'd stopped securing her at night, the unspoken acknowledgement that she wouldn't try running again hanging between them. The mountain path grew steeper, winding through pine forests that filled the air with sharp, clean scent. Beth's back ached constantly now, the weight of her child pressing heavily. When she stumbled on a root, gasping with pain, Macca was beside her instantly. "Rest," he said, guiding her to a fallen log. She nodded gratefully, rubbing the small of her back. From his pack, Macca produced a small clay cup, its surface etched with geometric patterns. He filled it from his water skin, then added something from a leather pouch, dried leaves that swirled in the water. "Drink," he offered. "Good for mother, good for baby." Beth hesitated only briefly before accepting. The liquid was bitter, but not unpleasant, with hints of mint and something earthy. Almost immediately, the ache in her back began to subside. "Thank you," she said, tracing the cup's design with her fingertip. "Did you make this?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "My mother's hands made this. Long ago." It was the most he'd spoken at once, and Beth seized the opportunity. "Your mother, is she at this camp we're going to?" Macca's face closed again. "Gone. Many winters passed." "I'm sorry," Beth offered. "Mine too. Fever took her when I was 14. He nodded, a moment of shared understanding passing between them. Taking the cup back, he rinsed it carefully before returning it to his pack. That evening, something shifted. As they ate the rabbit he'd snared, Beth found her voice. "I was a school teacher," she said suddenly. "In Pennsylvania, before." Her hand moved protectively to her belly. Macca looked up, waiting. His name was James, a circuit preacher who came through our town. Beth's voice hardened. He spoke so beautifully about salvation. Everyone trusted him. I trusted him. The fire crackled between them as she continued, words spilling out after months of enforced silence. "When he discovered I was with child, he left me at a way station, said he was getting supplies, never came back." She stared into the flame. "The station master sold me to a trader heading west. Said an unmarried woman in my condition was worth more on the frontier than back east." Macca listened without interruption, his face unreadable in the firelight. When she finally fell silent, he reached for his pack and withdrew the clay cup again. This time he poured a measure of amber liquid into it. "Medicine water," he explained, offering it to her. "From white traders. Not good medicine, but helps forget." Sometimes Beth took a small sip, coughing as the whiskey burned down her throat. "Where did you learn English?" she asked, eager to shift attention from her story. "Mission school. 3 years." His mouth tightened slightly. "They thought they could wash away Apache, make white man instead." "Did you have another name there?" "They called me Joseph." He spoke the name like it belonged to someone else entirely. Emboldened by the whiskey's warmth, Beth asked the question that had been haunting her. "Macca, why did you really buy me? $1 is nothing, but still." He was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. 7 winters ago, white soldiers took my wife. She carried our child." His eyes reflected the firelight, ancient pain burning there. "Never saw her again." The simple words hung in the night air between them, a bridge formed of shared suffering. Beth reached across the space, her pale hand coming to rest lightly on his brown one. Neither spoke again that night, but the silence had transformed from a wall to a shared language of its own. In the morning, Mocha brought her the clay cup once more, this time filled with a pine needle tea. As she drank, Beth realized the cup had become something more than a vessel. It was the beginning of a fragile trust, passed back and forth between their very different hands. The mountain trail narrowed as they climbed higher, forcing them to walk single file. Beth's breathing grew labored in the thinning air, her pregnancy making each step an effort. Mocha slowed his pace without comment, occasionally glancing back to ensure she followed. During a rest beneath a towering pine, Beth noticed a wide leather band encircling Mocha's left wrist. Unlike his other adornments, this one seemed purely functional, without decoration. When he reached across her for the water skin, the band shifted slightly, revealing a glimpse of puckered skin beneath. "Your wrist," she said before thinking. "It's scarred." Mocha's expression remained neutral, but his right hand moved instinctively to adjust the leather covering. For a moment, Beth thought he would ignore her observation. Then, with deliberate slowness, he untied the band. Angry white scars encircled his wrist completely, unmistakable marks left by iron shackles worn too long. Similar scars, she realized, to those that had only recently begun to fade on her own wrists. "Army fort," he said, his voice carrying no emotion. "4 summers ago, captured with 5 others when we approached under white flag." "How long?" Beth asked quietly. 374 days. The precision of his count spoke volumes. "You escaped." A sharp nod. "2 died in chains. 1 died running. 2 of us lived." He retied the band with practiced movements. "I count each day of freedom since." They continued walking, the revelation settling between them. That evening, as Mocha prepared a small fire in a sheltered hollow, Beth felt a sharp pain lance through her abdomen. She gasped, doubling over. Mocha was at her side instantly, concern breaking through his stoic demeanor. "Baby comes?" "No," Beth managed through gritted teeth. "Too early. Just pain." Without hesitation, Mocha helped her lie back against his rolled blanket. His hand hovered above her swollen belly. "May I?" At her nod, he placed his palm gently against her, his touch clinical rather than intimate. His frown deepened. "Baby sideways," he said finally. "Need to turn." Fear clutched at Beth's heart. "Is that dangerous?" "Can be." His honesty was both terrifying and reassuring. "My grandmother was medicine woman. I watched her turn many babies." He moved to his pack, returning with a small pouch of dried herbs. As he steeped them in hot water, Beth studied his face in the firelight. "At the fort," she began hesitantly, "was there a doctor for your people?" Mocha's hands stilled momentarily. "Man called himself doctor, came see why Indians died so quickly in chains." His voice took on a bitter edge. "Decided we die because we choose to," said Apache Heart. "Not strong like White Heart." The casual cruelty of the assessment hung in the air. Beth's hand moved protectively over her belly. "Here." Mocha offered the steaming liquid. "Drink slowly." The tea was bitter but brought almost immediate relief to the cramping. As the pain subsided, Beth found herself fighting unexpected tears. "My baby will have no father," she whispered. "No name except mine. In your tribe, what happens to children born without fathers?" Mocha considered before answering. "Child belongs to mother's clan. Takes her name, her people's strength." He added wood to the fire. "Child not punished for how they come to be." The simple declaration loosened something tight in Beth's chest. The baby shifted within her, the movement visible even through her dress. "May I?" Mocha asked, gesturing toward her belly once more. Beth nodded. This time his touch was different, a gentle exploration with skilled fingers, assessing the baby's position. His hands were warm through the fabric of her dress. "Better," he pronounced, sitting back. "Keep drinking tea. Tomorrow we reach good place to rest longer." That night Beth watched as Mocha absently rubbed his scarred wrist while keeping watch. The leather band lay beside him, temporarily discarded. "Thank you," she said softly, "for showing me." He nodded once, understanding she meant more than just the scars. "Chains leave marks," he replied, looking into the darkness beyond their fire. "Some seen, some not. But broken chains make strongest people." His words followed Beth into sleep, the scarred wristband between them, now a testament to survival rather than suffering. They crested the final ridge as dusk painted the valley in amber light. Below, nestled against the mountain's protective embrace, stood a cluster of dwellings, some traditional wickiups with brush and hide coverings, others more permanent log structures. Thin wisps of smoke rose from cooking fires, carrying the promise of community. "Your people," Beth whispered, suddenly aware of her foreign appearance, her pale skin, her swollen belly, her tattered dress. Maka nodded. "Small band. All that remains of my mother's clan." A child spotted them first, calling out in Apache. Soon, figures emerged from the dwellings, their faces a mixture of curiosity and wariness, as they registered Beth's presence. An elderly woman with silver-streaked hair stepped forward, her spine straight despite her years. Her dark eyes assessed Beth thoroughly, before turning to Maka with rapid questions. Maka responded calmly, his words measured. Though Beth couldn't understand the exchange, she recognized when she became the subject of their conversation. The older woman's gaze returned to her, lingering on her pregnant belly. Finally, Maka turned to Beth. "This is Nantai, elder mother of our band." Beth attempted an awkward nod of respect. "Please tell her I'm grateful for shelter." After Maka translated, Nantai's weathered face remained impassive. She spoke again, gesturing toward a dwelling at the edge of the camp. "She says you will stay in my sister's place." Maka explained, "My sister walks in the spirit world now. Her shelter has space." That night, Beth sat alone in the small wickiup, wrapped in a hide blanket that smelled of wood smoke and pine. Outside, she could hear the community gathering, voices rising and falling in discussion. She knew they were talking about her, the white woman Maka had brought into their sanctuary. Morning brought Nantai to her doorway, carrying a worn leather sack. Without waiting for invitation, the elder entered and sat cross-legged on the ground. From the sack she withdrew a stone mortar and pestle, ancient and smooth from generations of use. Nantai placed dried plants in the mortar and began grinding them with practiced movements. The rhythmic sound filled the small space, as Beth watched, uncertain what was expected of her. After several minutes, Nantai gestured for Beth to approach, pointing to Beth's belly, then to the ground herbs. She pantomimed drinking. "For the baby?" Beth asked, touching her stomach. Nantai nodded, her expression softening slightly. She added water from a skin, stirring the mixture with her finger before offering it to Beth. Beth hesitated only briefly before drinking. The bitter taste made her grimace, but she finished it under Nantai's watchful eye. When done, she handed back the mortar with a grateful smile. To her surprise, Nantai didn't leave. Instead, she patted the ground beside her. When Beth settled awkwardly, Nantai took her hands, turning them over to examine her palms. The elder woman snorted, saying something that sounded disapproving. Maka's voice came from the doorway. "She says your hands are too soft, useless hands." Beth flushed. "Tell her I was a teacher. My hands held books, not tools." After he translated, Nantai looked at Beth with new interest. She spoke again, gesturing to her own head, then to the children visible outside. "She wants to know if you will teach our children your words," Makar explained. "We have 3 who were at mission school. They remember some English." "Of course," Beth agreed quickly. "I'd be honored." That simple exchange transformed her status. By midday, Beth found herself seated outside, surrounded by curious children, while Nantai instructed women in their daily tasks nearby, keeping watchful eyes on the interaction. When Beth's back began to ache, she struggled to rise. A young woman hurried over, helping her to her feet and guiding her to the shade. There Nantai waited with the stone mortar, a different mixture being prepared. Makar approached, carrying firewood. "You are feeling well?" "Yes," Beth answered, surprised to realize it was true. "Everyone has been kind." "Not kind," he corrected. "Practical. Winter comes soon. All must work. All must contribute." That evening, as women prepared the communal meal, Nantai placed the mortar and pestle in Beth's lap, pointing to herbs laid out on a hide. The message was clear: learn this. Under Nantai's critical gaze, Beth began grinding, mimicking the circular motion she'd observed. When the elder corrected her technique with impatient hands, Beth felt an unexpected warmth. Not acceptance, not yet, but a beginning. Later, watching the ancient tool pass from hand to hand around the cooking fire, Beth understood. In this small band fighting for survival, usefulness was the only currency that mattered. The stone mortar, worn smooth by countless hands before hers, was not just a tool, it was her first step toward belonging. The first snowfall came with little warning. Beth woke to a transformed world, the camp blanketed in white stillness. For 3 days, gentle flurries continued, beautiful but unthreatening. The tribe went about their preparations, smoking the last of the autumn meat, gathering pine nuts, reinforcing shelters with the practiced efficiency of those who knew winter's true face was yet to come. Beth's days fell into a rhythm alongside the other women. Mornings, she helped prepare food and taught simple English words to the children. Afternoons, she struggled to learn Apache phrases under Nantai's exacting tutelage. Her swollen belly grew heavier, the child within increasingly active. On the 7th day, the sky darkened to an ominous gray-green. Maka returned early from hunting, his expression grave as he conferred with the elders. The camp erupted into activity. Additional firewood gathered, water containers filled, livestock herded into sheltered areas. "Big storm comes," Maka explained, helping Beth secure additional hides around her wickiup. "Maybe 3-4 days. No one leaves camp." Beth nodded, suppressing her anxiety. "What can I do to help?" Instead of answering, Maka disappeared into his own dwelling, returning with a small leather pouch. Inside nestled a slender bone needle, yellowed with age, its eye so fine she could barely see the opening. "My grandmother's," he said, "for making winter clothes. Nantai will show you." In the elder woman's wickiup, several women already sat in a circle, working by firelight. Nantai gestured Beth to an empty spot, placing a stack of soft tanned hides beside her. With quick gestures she demonstrated how to cut and piece together a cradle board, a traditional baby carrier. The storm arrived with fury, wind howling through the camp like a living creature. Inside the elders' dwelling, the fire crackled steadily as women worked and spoke in low voices. Beth struggled with the unfamiliar technique, her fingers clumsy with the delicate bone needle. Each time she made a mistake, Nantai clicked her tongue in disapproval, unraveling the stitches to start again. By the 2nd day of howling winds, Beth's back ached constantly. As she paused to stretch, a young woman named Casa smiled sympathetically. "Maybe soon," she said in halting English. "My sister, same moon, same big." She curved her hands over an imaginary belly. Beth nodded gratefully at the attempt at conversation. "Is your sister here in the camp?" Casa's smile faded. She shook her head, touching her heart. "Gone. Maybe too." The simple words hung heavy in the air. Beth swallowed hard, her hand moving protectively to her abdomen. The child kicked vigorously, as if protesting such thoughts. That night, the storm reached its peak. The wind found every gap in the wickiup coverings, sending cold drafts swirling through the shelters. Unable to sleep, Beth worked by firelight, her fingers growing more confident with the bone needle. The repetitive motion became meditative, calming her fears. A shadow fell across her work as Maka ducked through the entrance, bringing a blast of cold air and snowflakes. He carried extra firewood and stopped short, seeing her awake. "The baby," he asked, concern evident. Restless like me, Beth replied. She held up her work, the nearly completed cradleboard. I think I'm finally learning. Maka added wood to her dying fire, then settled across from her. For a time he simply watched her work, the silence comfortable between them. In your teaching place, he finally asked, did you make things with your hands? Beth smiled at the memory. Books, paper, ink. Nothing that would survive a winter like this. She gestured toward the storm. My father thought such work beneath me. He wanted me educated. Refined, Maka repeated, testing the word. This means removed, like taking away. In a way, Beth said, surprised by his insight, removing the rough edges, the impurities. Maka considered this, watching her fingers work the needle through the hide. My people believe the rough edges make the strongest designs, like mountain stone shaped by storm. The philosophical observation surprised her. Before she could respond, the baby kicked sharply enough that she gasped, dropping the needle. Without hesitation, Maka retrieved it, his fingers briefly brushing hers, as he returned the delicate tool. The child has strong opinions, he said, the faintest smile touching his lips. About everything, Beth agreed, returning to her work. Especially when I try to rest, Maka remained, feeding her fire through the night as she worked. By dawn, when the storm briefly subsided, the cradleboard was complete. Beth ran her fingers over the smooth bone needle, marveling at how such a small tool could create something so essential for her child's survival in this harsh world. As if reading her thoughts, Maka spoke. Small things endure when great things fall. My grandmother's hands held this needle through 3 great wars with the White Army. He pointed to her finished work. Now it prepares for new life. In that moment, with the storm temporarily quieted and the bone needle warm in her palm, Beth felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not quite belonging, but perhaps its beginning. The pains began in the deep hours of night, startling Beth from fitful sleep. She lay still, counting between contractions, as her mother had taught her to do with the women in their community. When the third pain came quickly after the second, she knew it was time. Outside, the storm had weakened, but snow still fell steadily. Beth wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and made her way through knee-deep drifts to Nantai's dwelling. The elder woman took one look at Beth's face and nodded, immediately calling out to rouse the other women. Within moments, Beth found herself in a whirlwind of quiet, efficient activity. Furs were arranged near the fire, water set to boil, bundles of herbs unwrapped. Kasa supported Beth through a contraction, while Nantai issued instructions that needed no translation. Maka appeared briefly at the entrance, concern evident in his face. It's time, Beth managed between breaths. The baby comes, he nodded, ducking outside only to return with an object wrapped in soft hide. Unwrapping it, he revealed a small bowl carved from aromatic cedar, its inner surface worn smooth with age and use. Nantai accepted it with reverence, speaking rapid words that seemed both instruction and blessing. Birth bowl, Maka explained to Beth, for welcoming new life. I will wait outside with the men. As he turned to leave, Beth reached out impulsively, catching his wrist. Thank you, she whispered, another contraction building. He covered her hand briefly with his own before departing. What followed was a blur of pain and ancient ritual. The women positioned Beth on her knees above the cedar bowl, supporting her body as Nantai whispered songs that seemed to rise and fall with each contraction. The elder dipped her fingers in a mixture of herbs and water, tracing symbols on Beth's distended belly. Hours passed, marked only by Beth's increasingly urgent cries and the women's steady encouragement. When her strength began to falter, Nantai produced a tea that tasted of pine and something sharper. It brought a rush of renewed energy, enough to continue pushing when her body demanded it. I can't, Beth gasped, after a particularly vicious contraction left her trembling. I don't have the strength. Casa wiped her brow with a cool cloth, speaking in broken English. You have. Baby knows way. Nantai placed the cedar bowl directly beneath Beth now, positioning it with precise care. She spoke directly to Beth for the first time in English, a single word, push. With a final primal cry, Beth felt the baby slip from her body in a rush of fluid and relief. Nantai caught the infant in the cedar bowl, quickly clearing tiny airways before the first indignant wail filled the wickiup. Girl, Casa announced, beaming as she helped Beth lie back on the fur. Nantai worked with practiced efficiency, using the knife she'd kept in the fire to sever the cord, tying it with sinew. She washed the infant in the bowl with herb-infused water, wrapping her in soft rabbit skins before placing her on Beth's chest. The child was perfect, red-faced and furious at her abrupt entry into the cold world, tiny fists waving in protest. A dusting of dark hair crowned her head, and when her eyes briefly opened, Beth saw they were deep blue like her own, like her mother's before her. Sarah, Beth whispered, the name she'd carried secretly throughout her pregnancy. Your name is Sarah. As dawn broke, the storm finally passed. Sunlight filtered through the smoke hole, casting a golden beam directly on the cedar bowl, now cleaned and placed near the fire. Nantai gestured toward it, speaking, She says the bowl has welcomed many children. Casa translated. Good sign that your daughter first touched cedar. Strong medicine tree. Beth nodded, exhausted beyond words. Her body felt hollow and tender, but the weight of Sarah against her chest filled an emptiness she hadn't realized was there. The wickiup flap opened, admitting Maka. He hesitated, waiting for Nantai's nod before approaching. His eyes went immediately to the bundle in Beth's arm. A daughter, Beth said softly. Her name is Sarah. Maka crouched beside them. His usual stoicism softened. Sarah, he repeated carefully. Good name, strong. With solemn gentleness, he placed a finger in the infant's tiny palm. Sarah's fingers reflexively curled around it, gripping with surprising strength. Something flickered across Maka's face. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. He looked to Nantai, who lifted the cedar bowl and spoke at length, her voice carrying the cadence of formal declaration. When she finished, the other women murmured in agreement. What did she say? Beth asked. Nantai says your daughter is born of two worlds but will walk in one. Maka translated. The cedar bowl has accepted her spirit. She is welcome among the people. As if understanding the significance of the moment, Sarah opened her eyes fully, her unfocused gaze moving from her mother to the tall figure beside them. She sees far already, Nantai said through Casa's translation. Bowl caught her between worlds. She will have strong vision. Beth traced her daughter's delicate features with a trembling finger. Born in a storm, welcomed by a sacred bowl, daughter of both worlds yet belonging fully to neither. What future awaited this child? Maka seemed to read her thoughts. Every birth is a new beginning, he said quietly. For the child, for the mother, he hesitated, for all who welcome her. In that moment, with the cedar bowl standing witness, Beth felt the boundaries of her old life finally release their hold. Winter yielded slowly to spring. The snow retreated up the mountainsides, and the first green shoots emerged from thawing ground. Sarah thrived, growing stronger each day. Her eyes remained the deep blue of her mother's, but her features increasingly suggested her mixed heritage. Her father's contribution, not entirely erased. Beth's place in the tribe had transformed with motherhood. Where once she had been tolerated as Maka's strange burden, she was now respected for her resilience in childbirth and her dedication to learning tribal ways. The women included her in their work and conversations, Casa continuing to serve as translator when Nantai's complex instructions exceeded Beth's growing Apache vocabulary. Most evenings Maka visited their dwelling, bringing small gifts for Sarah, a rabbit-foot toy, a tiny moccasin too small for her foot, but perfect for her curious fingers. He never stayed long, but his interest in the child's development was evident. One mild afternoon, Beth sat outside with Sarah, enjoying the sunshine while helping the women prepare hides. Casa approached with a small object wrapped in soft leather. For washing face, she explained, unveiling a small trade mirror in a tarnished metal frame. From my sister, now yours. Beth accepted the gift with appropriate reverence, understanding its value. Manufactured goods were rare treasures in the camp. She angled it to catch the sunlight, showing Sarah their reflection. The baby reached for the shiny surface with a delighted gurgle. Thank you, Beth said sincerely. It's beautiful. Casa smiled, pleased. Now you see what we see. Strong woman. The compliment warmed Beth more than the spring sunshine. Later, alone in her wiki-up, she studied her reflection properly for the first time in nearly a year. A stranger looked back at her, tanned skin, hair lightened by sun and braided in Apache style. Laugh lines beginning at the corners of her eyes, despite everything she'd endured. Not the refined schoolteacher from Pennsylvania, but someone wilder, stronger. 2 days later, the tribe's scouts returned from a trading journey to a distant outpost with troubling news. Maka came directly to Beth's dwelling, his expression grave. White man at trading post, he explained, asking questions about woman with child. Beth's blood ran cold. What kind of man? Bounty hunter. Silas Reeves. Maka's face hardened. Bad reputation. Tracks runaway slaves. And others. The trader who sold me, Beth whispered, clutching Sarah protectively. He must have sent him when I didn't arrive at the auction house. That evening, the tribal council gathered. Though women rarely participated, Beth was summoned to hear the discussions. She sat at the edge of the circle, Sarah sleeping in her cradleboard, while the men debated in Apache too rapid for her to follow. Voices grew heated. Several men gestured toward Beth and the baby, their expressions ranging from concern to outright hostility. An elder spoke at length, his wizened face solemn. Maka responded with measured words that nonetheless carried intensity. Nantai finally broke her silence, her authoritative voice cutting through the argument. Whatever she said caused heads to nod in reluctant agreement. Later, Maka explained. Council divided. Some say you bring danger, should be sent away. His eyes met hers steadily. I said you are under my protection. You and Sarah stay. What did Nantai say? Beth asked. They seemed to listen to her. She reminded them our people know what it means to be hunted, he replied. Said we do not surrender our own to wolves. Relief washed through Beth, followed quickly by guilt. I've brought trouble to people who showed me kindness. Trouble finds the people with or without you, Maka said pragmatically. But now we know it comes, we prepare. That night, unable to sleep, Beth sat outside her wickiup. The camp was unnaturally quiet, extra sentries posted at the perimeter. The trade mirror lay in her lap, and she angled it to catch the moonlight. Beth, she started at Maka's voice. He settled beside her, his rifle across his knees. You should rest, he said quietly. I keep thinking about him looking for us. She shivered despite the mild night. What kind of man hunts a woman and her baby? Man who sees only money, not people. Maka's voice carried quiet certainty. But he hunts what he does not understand. Beth glanced down at the mirror, catching their dual reflection in its cracked surface, her pale face and his darker one, side by side under the same moon. What happens when he finds us? If, Maka corrected, if he finds... He touched the mirror lightly, tracing the crack that divided its surface. This was broken when Casa received it. She kept it because broken things still have purpose, still show truth. The philosophical observation was characteristic of him, but brought little comfort. And what truth does it show now? Maka's eyes met hers in the mirror's reflection. That you are no longer alone. Before she could respond, a distant owl call sounded, but with a pattern too regular for nature. Maka stood immediately, rifle ready. Signal from scout, he explained tersely. Riders approaching valley. Many horses. The trade mirror slipped from Beth's fingers as she reached for Sarah. In its broken face, the reflection of the moon shattered into fragments. As storm clouds gathered on the horizon, the camp erupted into silent, efficient action. Within minutes, the tribe was mobilizing, women packing essential supplies, men gathering weapons, children helping without question. Beth stood frozen until Nantai appeared, thrusting a small deerskin pouch into her hands. Medicine bundle, Casa translated hastily, already loading a travois. Protection for journey. Maka approached, leading 2 horses. No time to bring everything, only what we need to survive. Where will we go? Beth asked, securing Sarah in her cradleboard. Higher mountains, summer hunting grounds. He helped her onto one of the horses. Not easy trail. Reeves and his men will struggle to follow. By moonset, the entire camp had vanished, leaving only cold fire pits and empty wickiups as decoys. The tribe moved in 3 groups, elders and children on the main trail, with most supplies, warriors flanking to watch for pursuit, and a small diversionary party creating false trails. Beth rode with the main group, the medicine bundle hanging from her neck, Sarah secured against her chest. The horses picked their way through narrow mountain passes where winter's grip still held, hooves breaking through crusted snow. Daybreak found them deep in unfamiliar territory. Maka appeared briefly, materializing from the forest like a shadow. Riders followed Valley Trail, he reported. 8 men, rifles, tracking dogs. The elder leading their group nodded grimly, issuing orders to continue without rest. Beth felt fear rising as Sarah began to fuss, hungry and uncomfortable. "I need to stop," she whispered to Casa, just long enough to feed her. Casa relayed the message. The group halted in a sheltered ravine, while Beth nursed Sarah, her back against a boulder, every sound making her flinch. The medicine bundle rested in her lap, its weight somehow reassuring. "What's in it?" she asked Casa, touching the pouch. "Sacred things," the young woman explained. "Tobacco for offering, sage for cleansing, hawk feather for sharp eyes, stone from ancestor land." She touched it reverently. "Very strong medicine, Nantai made special for you and baby." Beth felt a surge of gratitude toward the elder woman, who had initially been so reluctant to accept her. "Will it help us escape?" Cassie's expression turned serious. "Medicine, not magic. Help those who help themselves." They continued through the day, climbing steadily higher. Beth's body ached from the unaccustomed riding, but she refused to complain. By nightfall, they reached a high plateau, where the advance party had established a temporary camp. Fires were forbidden, cold food shared in whispers. Maka found Beth settling Sarah for the night beneath a makeshift shelter of pine boughs. "You did well today," he said, surprising her with the direct praise. Many white women would cry, "Give up." "I'm not giving up while Sarah needs me," Beth replied, touching the medicine bundle at her throat. "How close are they?" "Lost main trail when we crossed river, dogs confused." A hint of satisfaction crossed his face. "Divided now, some follow false trail east, but some still follow us." He nodded. "Reeves leads them. Smart tracker." The night passed in fitful watches, every snapping twig causing hands to move to weapon. Dawn brought no rest, the tribe moving immediately, higher into thinning air where pine gave way to scrub and rock. Beth's mare stumbled on the treacherous path, nearly sending her and Sarah over a precipice. Only Maka's quick reaction saved them, his hands shooting out to steady the horse's bridle. Path too dangerous for horses now, he decided. "We go on foot." Walking proved even more grueling. Beth's city-bred legs protested each step, but the women surrounded her, taking turns carrying Sarah when Beth's strength flagged. The medicine bundle bounced against her chest with each labored breath, its contents rattling softly. By midday, they reached a concealed valley high in the mountains, a summer hunting camp with permanent structures built against the cliff face. The elders declared they would make their stand here if necessary. As the tribe fortified natural defenses, Maka took Beth to a small cave, the main camp. "Stay here with Sarah," he instructed. "Good view of approaches. If fighting starts..." He hesitated. If fighting starts, Beth prompted. He pointed to a narrow trail barely visible along the cliff. That path leads over mountains, follows stream on other side down to valley. Shoshone allies there. The implication was clear: if things went badly, she was to flee with Sarah. I won't leave you all to face danger I brought, Beth protested. Macca's expression softened briefly. Sarah needs her mother alive. That night, as Sarah slept, Beth untied the medicine bundle, carefully examining its contents: the tobacco leaves, sage bundle, hawk feather, and small white stone worn smooth by generations of handling. She wasn't sure if she believed in their power, but the care with which they'd been assembled represented something beyond superstition, a community's protection extending to her and her child. She was retying the pouch when Macca appeared at the cave entrance, tension evident in his stance. "What is it?" she asked, immediately alert. "Campfire." He pointed to a distant ridge. "Reeves, they found our trail." Beth clutched the medicine bundle, feeling the hawk feather inside. Perhaps it was time to be sharp-eyed indeed, and see a way forward that hadn't yet revealed itself. Dawn broke with unnatural silence, no birdsong, no rustling animals. Even Sarah seemed to sense the tension, remaining unusually quiet against Beth's chest. The tribe had positioned lookouts at strategic points throughout the valley, children and elders hidden in caves, warriors concealed among rocks and sparse vegetation. Macca appeared at mid-morning, face painted with ochre streaks that transformed his features into something both ancient and fearsome. "They come," he said simply. 8 men, armed. Beth's mouth went dry. "Reeves leads them. Offered Scout tobacco to betray our location." His expression darkened. "Scout accepted, then warned us instead. What will happen? First, we talk." Macca checked his rifle, Apache way off a piece before war. He left her with final instructions to stay hidden with Sarah, no matter what occurred. From her vantage point in the high cave, Beth could see the entire valley floor. When the bounty hunters appeared, they seemed startlingly vulnerable. 8 dusty men leading tired horses along the narrow trail. At their head rode a tall figure whose bearing marked him as the leader, even before Beth recognized the cruel face she'd glimpsed briefly at the traders' camp months ago. Silas Reeves sat his horse with the confidence of a man accustomed to success, scanning the apparently empty valley with narrowed eyes. One of his men, younger than the others, carried something that caught the sunlight, a small silver object that he nervously turned over in his hands. The riders halted at the valley's center. Reeves raised his voice, the words carrying clearly in the mountain air. "I know you're here, Injuns. I'm not looking for trouble with your tribe. Just return what belongs to me, the white woman and her bastard, and we'll ride out peaceful like." Silence answered him. The young man with the silver object, a harmonica, Beth now realized, raised it to his lips, but Reeves knocked his hand down with a muttered curse. After tense minutes, Macca emerged alone from the rocks, rifle held non-threateningly at his side, stopped 30 paces from the riders. "The woman belongs to no man," Macca stated, his English deliberate and clear. "She is under Apache protection." Reeves spat. "That property was purchased fair and legal from trader Jim Wilson. I've got papers and $50 saying she's mine to collect." "Papers mean nothing here," Macca replied. "This is Apache land." Reeves's face darkened. "I've hunted worse than Apache. Last chance to hand her over before things get unpleasant." At Macca's slight gesture, 20 warriors rose from concealment. Arrows knocked, rifles aimed. Reeves's men shifted nervously, suddenly aware of their disadvantage. "Boss," the young man with the harmonica muttered, "maybe we should shut up, Tanner." Reeves snapped. To Macca he called, "You willing to see your people die for one white whore? Are you willing to die for $50? Macca. The standoff stretched, neither side yielding. From her hidden position, Beth clutched Sarah tighter, the baby sensing her tension and beginning to fuss. When Sarah let out a sudden wail, heads turned toward the sound. Reeves's face twisted into a triumphant smile. "There's my merchandise now." What happened next unfolded with terrible swiftness. Reeves raised his rifle toward the sun. Maka moved like lightning, closing the distance between them. Warriors emerged from cover, arrows flying. The bounty hunters returned fire, chaos erupting across the valley floor. Beth ducked deeper into the cave, trying to quiet Sarah while keeping watch through a narrow opening. She saw Maka grappling with Reeves, both men falling from the horse. Other warriors engaged the remaining bounty hunters, the air filling with gun smoke and war cries. The young man with the harmonica didn't draw his weapon. Instead, he wheeled his horse, galloping toward the cave where Beth hid. She retreated further inside, heart pounding, looking desperately for a weapon. He appeared at the entrance, silhouetted against the light. "Ma'am, are you in here?" Beth remained silent, pressing against the wall. "Please," he called softly. "I'm not with them." "Not really." He stepped inside, hands empty except for the silver harmonica. "My name's Will Tanner. I was forced to guide them, but I want no part in taking a mother from her child." When Beth still didn't respond, he placed the harmonica on a rock. "My sister, she was taken too. Never found her." His voice cracked. "Take the back trail south. I'll tell them you went north." Before Beth could respond, gunfire intensified outside. Will Tanner looked over his shoulder, then back at the shadows where she hid. "God keep you safe, ma'am," he whispered, then disappeared. Beth waited breathless moments before approaching the harmonica. The silver was dented, tarnished with age and hard use. She tucked it into her pocket, just as Casa appeared at the cave entrance, blood spattering her dress. "Come," the young woman urged. "Maka says go now. Take escape trail." "What's happened? Is he fighting? Bad?" Reeves, men, very angry. Casa helped gather the few supplies. "Maka say take Sarah away now." Outside, the battle continued. Beth caught glimpses of hand-to-hand combat, heard the crack of rifles. As Casa led her to the hidden trail, she saw the young bounty hunter Will Tanner riding hard away from the valley, alone. Beth clutched the silver harmonica, this unexpected token of kindness from an enemy's camp. Its presence in her pocket was a cold reminder that even in the simplest battles, good and evil were rarely clearly divided. The escape trail proved barely passable, a narrow track clinging to the mountainside, invisible unless you knew precisely where to look. Beth followed Casa, Sarah secured tightly against her chest, each step a careful negotiation between haste and safety. Behind them, gunfire gradually faded, the sounds of conflict receding into mountain echoes. They traveled through the day, stopping only when Sarah needed feeding, or when the trail became too treacherous to navigate without rest. By dusk, they reached a small plateau with a spring-fed pool, a prearranged meeting point. Other tribal members gradually arrived, first children led by older girls, then elders supported by teenagers, finally several wounded warriors. Beth scanned each new arrival, her heart sinking as hours passed, with no sign of Maka. Nantai appeared near midnight, her weathered face grave. In her hands she carried the broken shaft of an arrow, its red-dyed feathers unmistakable as Maka's. "Is he?" Beth couldn't finish the question. The elder woman shook her head, offering the split arrow. Through Casa's translation, Beth understood Maka had been wounded but escaped. The arrow was his message to divide the tribe for safety. Some would continue to their Shoshone allies, others would circle back to their winter camp when safe. "Maka say you choose," Casa explained. "Go forward to Shoshone lands or wait for him at winter camp." Beth stared at the broken arrow shaft. "But what happened to him? Where is he?" Nantai spoke at length, her words carrying both concern and pride. Casa translated hesitantly. "Maka fought Reeves man to man, both wounded. Reeves' men took their leader away, but 2 dead left behind. Maka hit here." She touched her side. "But still able to ride. He leads remaining bounty hunters away from us. He's using himself as bait." Beth realized, horror spreading through her. "They'll kill him when they catch him." "If they catch him," one of the warriors corrected in halting English. Maka knows mountains better than white men know their own faces. The tribe settled for the night in the minimal shelter of overhanging rocks. Beth sat apart, cradling Sarah while turning the split arrow in her fingers. The break was clean, not splintered in battle, but deliberately snapped to create a message. Division, choice. Two paths forward. By morning, the decision could no longer be delayed. The tribe would separate with the rising sun, the majority continuing to Shoshone territory, a smaller group returning to winter camp once they confirmed the hunters had left the area. Nantai approached as Beth prepared Sarah for travel. The elder's face had softened since the first days of Beth's arrival, months of shared experience erasing initial suspicion. She spoke quietly, Kasa, translating. Nantai says winter camp not safe for white woman and baby alone. Better to go to Shoshone land. Beth looked down at the split arrow. Will Maka know to find us there? Another exchange followed, Nantai's voice growing more emphatic. Kasa nodded. She says Maka will find you wherever you go. But Shoshone have white missionary. Maybe help protect you legal way with white man papers. The practical wisdom was undeniable. With allies who understood white laws, Beth might secure legitimate protection for herself and Sarah. Yet something in her resisted the seemingly safer path. If I go to the winter camp and wait, will any of our people be there? Beth asked, the possessive R slipping out unconsciously. Nantai and Kasa exchanged glances. After brief consultation, Kasa replied, few hunters return there to check for Maka. Not many. Beth looked down at Sarah, peacefully sleeping despite the chaos surrounding her young life. The child had been born among the Apache, had known no other life. What right did Beth have to separate her from the people who had accepted them both? I will return to the winter camp, she decided. Maka saved us. I won't abandon him now. Nantai studied her face, then nodded slowly. She spoke again, her voice carrying formal weight. Kasa translated with evident emotion. Nantai says you have Apache heart now. Stubborn like Maka, she will go with you to winter camp. Beth's eyes widened. But it's dangerous, you should be with the main group. The old woman snorted, responding without needing translation. She pointed to her grey hair, then to Beth's fair locks, finally touching Sarah's dark fuzz. 3 generations, her gesture implied, bound together by choice rather than blood. Nantai says you need her wisdom. Kasa added unnecessarily. Says baby needs grandmother. By sunrise, the tribe divided like the arrow in Beth's hand. The larger group departed eastward toward Shoshone lands, laden with most of their remaining supplies. Beth watched them go with mixed emotions, Kasa among them, their friendship now another casualty of circumstance. The smaller band, Beth, Sarah, Nantai, 2 injured warriors and 3 hunters turned westward toward the winter camp. Their path would be circuitous, designed to avoid possible pursuit, with few supplies and constant danger. As they set out, Nantai reached for the split arrow, breaking it again into even smaller fragments. She scattered these along their trail, not as a marker for enemies, Beth realized, but as a message for one particular tracker. We have chosen. Follow if you can. Beth touched the silver harmonica in her pocket, this unexpected talisman from an enemy's kindness. Between it and the fragmented arrow, perhaps they had enough protection to see them home. The journey back to winter camp took a circuitous path through the mountain's most challenging terrain. Their small band, 7 souls in total, moved with the deliberate caution of prey aware of hunters. The 2 injured warriors, despite their pain, maintained stoic vigilance. The 3 hunters ranged ahead and behind, ensuring their trail remained hidden. At the group's center traveled Beth, Sarah and Nantai, the elder woman moving with surprising endurance despite her years. She carried an ancient pouch at her waist, its leather darkened by generations of hands. On the second evening, as they made cold camp in a sheltered ravine, Nantai withdrew an object from this pouch, an obsidian blade no longer than Beth's palm, its edge catching the fading light with mirror brightness. Oldest tool of the people, Nantai explained in her limited English, demonstrating its use by effortlessly slicing through a tough strip of dried venison. She offered a portion to Beth, who accepted gratefully, her own hunger secondary to the need to produce milk for Sarah. One of the hunters returned at nightfall, concern etched on his face. He conferred quietly with Nantai, whose expression grew grave. When he departed to resume his watch, Beth asked what had happened. "Tracks," Nantai replied. "Two men follow. Not main group. These woes break away, circle back. Reeves?" Beth asked, fear clutching at her heart. Nantai shook her head. "Reeves, badly hurt by Makar. These others," she made a dismissive gesture. "Not good trackers, but dangerous still. They traveled before dawn, moving deeper into forests, where pine needles swallowed their footprints." Sarah remarkably seemed to understand the need for silence, her usual babbling subdued to occasional whimpers quickly soothed at Beth's breast. By midday, they crossed a swift mountain stream, wading through icy water to confuse their trail. On the far bank, Nantai stumbled, her foot catching between submerged stones. Beth caught the elder woman's arm, preventing a fall, but not before Nantai's ankle twisted painfully. "I'm fine," the older woman insisted in Apache, the words among the few Beth had mastered, but her limping gait told another story. That evening the ankle had swollen badly. One of the warriors examined it, speaking rapidly to Nantai, who waved away his concern with impatient gestures. When he'd gone to gather more firewood, their first hot meal in days deemed worth the risk, Nantai withdrew the obsidian blade again. To Beth's shock, the elder woman made a precise, shallow cut along her own ankle. Dark blood welled immediately. "What are you doing?" Beth gasped. "Release bad blood," Nantai explained calmly. "Old way." She pressed around the wound, allowing blood to flow freely before applying a poultice of herbs from another pouch. Beth watched with equal parts horror and fascination. The elder's hands moved with practiced confidence, turning the obsidian blade to catch the firelight before cleaning it carefully with a cloth. "Very old," Nantai said, noting Beth's interest in the tool. "My grandmother's grandmother found after Great Fire Mountain." She mimicked an explosion with her hands. Spirit stone, sharper than any metal, she offered the blade to Beth, an unexpected gesture of trust. Beth accepted it carefully, marveling at its impossible lightness and the rainbow iridescence visible in its polished black surface. "Many uses," Nantai continued. "Cut food, cut leather, cut sickness from body." She touched her bandaged ankle. "Also cut baby cord when time comes." Beth returned the blade with appropriate reverence, understanding now why Nantai carried it despite its seemingly impractical size for survival needs. This was no mere tool, but a connection to ancestors, to tradition, to ways of healing and living that preceded white men's medicine. "Sarah's cord," Beth said slowly, realization dawning. "You used this when she was born." Nantai nodded. "Same blade cut my cord, my mother's cord. Many generations." She touched Sarah's cheek gently. "Now her cord too." She connected to the people. The significance of this casual revelation left Beth momentarily speechless. This ancient tool had literally connected her daughter to the Apache bloodline, a symbolic adoption more powerful than any ceremony. Their quiet moment ended abruptly when one of the hunters returned, urgency in his movements. He spoke rapidly to Nantai, who translated the essence for Beth. "Men closer, following stream up. Find us by morning if we stay." Despite her injured ankle, Nantai rose immediately. "Must move, night travel." Beth secured Sarah against her chest, helping support Nantai as they slipped back into the darkness. The obsidian blade returned to its pouch, but its significance remained with Beth. a reminder that they carried ancient strength with them, connections to a time before their current troubles seemed meaningful. They traveled through the night, guided by starlight. Nantai's limp gradually improved, the old woman's remedy apparently effective, despite Beth's initial skepticism. By dawn they reached a series of rock formations that offered both concealment and defensive positions. As the rising sun illuminated the valley below, Beth caught sight of a lone rider in the distance, too far to identify, moving parallel to their route. Friend or foe remained impossible to determine, but the hunter's reaction, a quiet grunt of approval, suggested the former. "Muck?" Beth asked hopefully. The hunter shook his head. "Not his horse, but Apache rider." He squinted at the distant figure. "Signal scout, maybe, watching for us." For the first time in days, Beth felt a flicker of hope. They weren't alone in these mountains. Somewhere their people were watching, waiting, perhaps even clearing the path ahead. As they prepared to rest through the hottest part of the day, Nantai placed the obsidian blade in Beth's palm once more. Closing her fingers around it, "Keep today," the elder woman said simply. "Sharp edge cuts danger too." Beth tucked the ancient tool carefully into her own pouch, its weight against her hip as reassuring as the warmth of Sarah against her chest. Two precious links to a future she was determined they would reach. 4 days into their journey, supplies dwindled dangerously. The hunters returned with less game each day, the late spring mountains offering meager sustenance. Beth's milk began to thin, Sarah fussing with hunger that couldn't be fully satisfied. Nantai's ankle had improved, but their pace remained slow, the distance to winter camp still substantial. At dawn on the 5th day, their scout returned with unexpected news. Smoke from a large encampment lay just beyond the next ridge. Not white settlers, but a mixed band of Shoshone and Bannock, traditional allies with Marca's people during summer hunting seasons. "Safe?" Beth asked, bouncing a fretful Sarah. The hunter's expression remained cautious. "Allies in good times. These not good times. Must approach carefully." They sent 2 scouts ahead with ceremonial offerings, tobacco and salt, universal signals of peaceful intent. Beth waited anxiously with Nantai and the remaining warrior, hidden among pines, overlooking the valley. Hours passed before a signal came, 3 short owl calls, followed by a wolf howl. "Welcome signal," Nantai explained, gathering her few possessions. "They accept us." The camp sprawled across a sheltered valley, 30 or more lodges arranged in a rough circle. Women worked at cooking fires, children played in the central area, and men sat in council groups. All activity paused as the small Apache band emerged from the trees, wary eyes assessing the newcomers. A tall man stepped forward, gray-streaked hair and a deeply lined face marking him as an elder of importance. He and Nantai exchanged formal greetings in a trade language Beth didn't recognize. The tension gradually eased as they spoke, the elder's stern expression softening as Nantai gestured toward Beth and Sarah. "He is Pato, headman of this band," Nantai translated. "Says we may rest here. They have food to share." The hospitality, while cautious, proved genuine. Beth and Sarah were given space in a lodge, shared with 2 Bannock widows, who regarded the white woman with undisguised curiosity. Sarah, however, transcended the cultural barrier immediately, her baby smiles and grabbing hands drawing reluctant delight from the women. One of them, Wissa, fashioned a small doll from woven sweetgrass, while Sarah watched, wide-eyed. The simple toy, a vaguely human shape with arms extended, became an instant treasure, Sarah clutching it with determined fingers. "She makes for all new babies," Nantai explained. "Old tradition, doll watches over child, while mother sleeps." That evening, Beth sat with the women as they prepared the communal meal. Her attempts to help were initially waved off until she demonstrated her ability to clean rabbits, a skill learned during her months with Marca's people. This small competence earned approving nods, hands gesturing for her to continue. Later, Pato summoned Nantai and Beth to his lodge. The elder sat wrapped in a buffalo robe, Despite the mild spring evening, his dark eyes evaluating Beth with unnerving directness. He asks why white woman travels with Apache. Nantai translated, wants to know your story. Beth hesitated, uncertain how much to reveal. Finally, with Nantai translating, she shared a simplified version of her journey. The auction block, Maka's intervention, the birth of Sarah, and now the pursuit by men who claimed ownership of her. Pato listened impassively, occasionally asking questions through Nantai. When Beth finished, he sat in silence, pipe in hand, considering. He says white man's hunger's never satisfied. Nantai finally translated, first land, then gold, now even people not safe. She hesitated before adding, he asks if you wish to continue with Apache or stay with his people. Says Bannock women would welcome another mother for children's teaching. The unexpected offer caught Beth off guard. What did you tell him? That you have Apache heart now? That you wait for Maka? Hate rose in Beth's cheeks at the implication in Nantai's word. I'm waiting for all our people to regroup, she clarified, for safety. Nantai's knowing look suggested she understood more than Beth admitted even to herself. To Pato, the elder woman spoke at length, occasionally gesturing toward Sarah, who slept peacefully against Beth's chest, the grass doll still clutched in her tiny fist. Pato nodded gravely when Nantai finished. He spoke again, his deep voice carrying formal weight. He says his scouts report white men still searching. Nantai translated, 2 follow your trail, more gathering at trading post. She paused. Also, says Apache rider seen near eastern passes, wounded, but alive. Possibly Maka. Beth's heart leapt. Did they speak to him? No. Watched only. Apache rode north, toward Broken Tooth Mountain. That's not toward winter camp, Beth said, confusion replacing hope. Nantai exchanged more words with Pato, their discussion becoming animated. Finally, Nantai turned back to Beth. Pato says white soldier parties also in mountains, looking for renegade Apache. Her expression darkened. Maka may be leading them away from winter camp, away from us. The implication settled like stones in Beth's stomach. Maka wasn't coming to them. He was deliberately drawing danger in the opposite direction. That night, sleepless in the borrowed lodge, Beth watched Sarah breathe, the woven grass doll still clutched in her hand. The simple toy, crafted by hands so different from her own, yet motivated by their protective instinct, embodied the unexpected connections she'd found in this harsh land. Outside, the council fire still burned as elders debated. Tomorrow would bring decisions none of them could postpone any longer. Beth touched the grass doll in Sarah's grip, its woven strength belying its apparent fragility, much like the bonds that had formed between herself and these people who had every reason to reject her. Morning brought the council's decision. Perto entered the lodge, where Beth fed Sarah, Nantai at his side. The elder's face carried the gravity of difficult choices. Scouts report bounty hunters joined by others. Nantai translated Perto's words. 6 men now, too close. She paused, visibly troubled. Also soldier patrol moving west, many rifles. Beth clutched Sarah closer. What will we do? Nantai and Perto exchanged looks before the elder woman continued. Council says split paths. Women and children go north with Bannock cousins to summer grounds. Men create false trails south. And us? Beth asked, already suspecting the answer. You and Sarah safer with women. Nantai's weathered hand touched the baby's head. I go with warriors. No ways to confuse white trackers. Beth's protest rose immediately. No, we stay together. You're still recovering from your injury. Nantai's expression softened. Old woman slows young mother. Sarah needs you strong, moving fast. She reached into her medicine pouch, withdrawing 2 small objects, identical pouches made from sleek otter skin, each no larger than Beth's palm. Special medicine, Nantai explained, placing one pouch in Beth's hand while keeping the other. When people must separate, these keep spirits connected. The pouch was butter soft, decorated with dyed porcupine quills in a geometric pattern. A faint, sweet smell emanated from within, tobacco mixed with herbs. One stays with each group, Nantai continued. Same tobacco from same plant, divided but still connected, burned together even when apart. She demonstrated by opening her pouch, pinching a small amount of the mixture, morning and evening, burn small portion. Smoke carries prayers between separated people. Pato spoke again, his deep voice solemn. He says Bannock women will guard you like their own. Nantai translated. His sister leads them, strong medicine woman, will help with Sarah. Beth fought back tears, recognizing the logic but resisting the separation. These past months, Nantai had transformed from intimidating elder to essential guide, her wisdom bridging cultural gaps that might otherwise have seemed insurmountable. When will we meet again? Beth asked, clutching the otterskin pouch. Nantai conferred with Pato before answering. When moon becomes full again, Bannock Band reaches Great Salt Lake Valleys. If safe, winter camp, Apache meet you there. A month of separation with no guarantee of reunion. Traveling with people whose language she barely understood, whose customs remained largely foreign despite her months with Marca's band. As if sensing her distress, Pato spoke directly to Beth. Though she couldn't understand his words, his tone carried reassurance. He pointed to Sarah, then made a sweeping gesture that encompassed the entire camp, his meaning clear. The child would unite them all in common purpose. Preparations moved swiftly. By midday, the camp had divided into 3 groups. The main Bannock Shoshone band, heading north with Beth, and other vulnerable members, a smaller warrior party including Nantai and the Apache men, creating false trails southward, and a 3rd group of hunters maintaining their original route to draw off pursuers. Before departing, Nantai took Sarah briefly in her arms, speaking softly in Apache. Beth recognized a blessing, though the specific words escaped her. The elder then pressed her forehead against Beth, in a gesture of uncommon intimacy. You have strong spirit, Nantai said simply. Like daughter, like Marca. She touched the otterskin pouch at Beth's waist. Remember, morning smoke, evening smoke. I do same. Beth nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. She fumbled at her neck, removing the medicine bundle Nantai had given her before their flight from the hunting camp. Take this, she insisted. For protection. Nantai accepted the exchange with appropriate solemnity, securing the bundle inside her dress. The gesture completed a circle between them, each now carrying the other's spiritual protection. As the groups prepared to depart in their separate directions, a Bannock woman approached Beth, Wessie, who had made the grass doll for Sarah. Without speaking, she took Beth's arm, leading her to where the women's horses waited. She pointed to a hardy pinto mare, already saddled with a cradle board secured to the back, a practical arrangement that would allow Beth to ride while Sarah remained safely harnessed. The thoughtful preparation brought fresh tears to Beth's eyes. She thanked Wessie in the few Bannock words Nantai had taught her, earning a rare smile from the reserved woman. Mounting the mare while Wessie helped secure Sarah in the cradleboard, Beth watched Nantai join the warrior party. The elder woman didn't look back as they moved into the forest, the separation already complete in her mind, practical survival taking precedence over sentiment. Beth touched the otterskin pouch at her waist, drawing comfort from its presence. The tobacco inside connected her to Nantai, to the Apache band, and by extension to Marca, wherever he might be in these vast mountains. As her group moved northward, Beth found herself instinctively scanning distant ridgelines, not for pursuers but for a lone rider she knew wouldn't appear. The rational part of her understood Marca's choice to lead danger away from them. The irrational part, the heart that had begun to depend on his steady presence, felt his absence like a physical ache. That evening when they made camp, Beth performed her first tobacco ritual. Following Nantai's instructions, she burned a pinch from the otterskin pouch, watching the smoke spiral upward into the darkening sky. Without fully understanding the spiritual significance, she nonetheless felt connection in the act, a tether across distance, binding together those whom circumstance had torn apart. The Bannock Shoshone band moved with practiced efficiency through mountain passes, their route clearly familiar from years of seasonal migration. Beth found her place among them gradually, the language barrier less important than her willingness to contribute to daily tasks. Sarah became their unlikely ambassador, her infant needs universally understood, her smiles transcending words. 7 days into their journey, they descended into a lush valley bisected by a clear, swift river. The band's mood lightened visibly. This watershed marked the boundary between hostile territory and traditional hunting grounds they considered relatively safe from pursuit. As women set up camp, Beth performed her evening tobacco ritual, burning a pinch from the otterskin pouch. The familiar act provided comfort, connection to those separated from her. She wondered if Nantai performed the same ritual miles away, if the elder woman remained safe. Pato's sister, Luyu, approached as Beth completed the ceremony. The medicine woman had taken particular interest in Sarah, often examining the baby with professional curiosity, apparently impressed by her robust health, despite the difficult circumstances of her birth and early months. Through gestures and their growing shared vocabulary, Luyu indicated they would cross the river tomorrow, reaching safer territory by nightfall. Beth nodded gratefully, the promise of security after weeks of flight almost too precious to believe. Dawn broke misty and cool. The camp dismantled quickly, loaded travoirs dragged by horses, children secured on travoirs or carried on women's backs. Beth settled Sarah into her cradleboard, the baby contentedly gumming her grass doll. The river crossing point featured a natural ford, the water running shallow over smooth stones. 2 hunters crossed first, ensuring the opposite bank was clear before waving the main party forward. Beth guided her mare into the water midway through the group, other women before and behind her. They were halfway across when the first shot rang out. A hunter at the front collapsed from his horse. Before anyone could react, more gunfire erupted from the tree line ahead. Panic exploded through the group, horses rearing, women screaming, children crying. Beth's mare spun in terror, nearly unseating her as Sarah wailed from her cradleboard. "Back, back!" someone shouted in broken English. Beth fought to control her panicked horse, finally managing to turn it toward the bank they'd left. Through the chaos, she glimpsed blue uniforms emerging from the trees, not bounty hunters, but soldiers, at least a dozen. Rifles ready. A warrior rode alongside Beth, grabbing her mare's bridle to help guide the frightened animal to shore. They had nearly reached the bank when he jerked suddenly, a red stain blossoming on his chest. He slid from his horse, eyes already empty. Reaching the shore, Beth dismounted frantically, checking Sarah, who screamed but appeared unharmed. Around them the band scattered in desperate retreat, abandoning supplies in their flight. Several bodies floated downstream, the clear water tinting red. "Halt!" By order of the United States Army, the authoritative voice carried over the chaos. A uniformed officer on horseback appeared on the opposite bank, gesturing for his men to cease fire. Too late, the damage was done. The peaceful band transformed into fleeing refugees. Luyu appeared at Beth's side, pulling her toward the forest. "Come, come now. Why are they shooting?" Beth cried. "We've done nothing." Luyu's expression conveyed generations of bitter understanding that needed no translation. They ran together toward the tree line, Sarah's cries muffled against Beth's chest. Behind them, soldiers crossed the river in pursuit. They had nearly reached the forest when a soldier intercepted them, rifle aimed. "Stop right there." Beth froze, instinctively turning to place her body between the weapon and Sarah. Luyu, however, continued forward, hands raised in what appeared to be surrender, until she suddenly threw a handful of powder into the soldier's face. The man screamed, dropping his weapon to claw at his eyes. Luyu grabbed Beth's arm, pulling her past the distracted soldier into the sheltering trees. They ran until their lungs burned, eventually joining a small group of women and children hiding in a rocky ravine. Lu Yu worked quickly, using mud to disguise their appearances, instructing everyone through gestures to remain absolutely silent. Hours passed. Distant shouts and occasional gunfire gradually faded. When Lu Yu finally deemed it safe to move, twilight was settling over the mountains. The survivors gathered in a hidden clearing, fewer than half their original number. Some would rendezvous later, having scattered in different directions, but others would never rejoin them. The brutal efficiency of the ambush had shattered their back. As they inventoried their meager salvage supplies, Beth found a small object in the mud on her dress, a brass button torn from a military uniform during her escape, its eagle insignia still visible, despite the tarnish. Pato arrived after nightfall, his face grim. Through Lu Yu's translation, Beth learned the devastating truth. The soldiers weren't specifically hunting them. They were a cavalry patrol engaged in pacification operations throughout the territory, attacking any indigenous group they encountered on general principle. They say all Indians hostile now, Lu Yu explained haltingly. No difference between tribes, no peace talks. The brass button weighed heavily in Beth's palm, a small piece of the institutional machinery that viewed these people as obstacles to be eliminated. The same machinery that would view her as a white woman corrupted by savages, her half-white child as an abomination. That night, Beth couldn't perform her tobacco ritual, the otterskin pouch lost in their desperate flight. The broken connection to Namtia Tamaka's band felt like another casualty of the day's violence. Pato spoke quietly with his remaining warriors. Their original destination now lay across territory, crawling with military patrols. New plans would be needed, new routes, new alliances. Beth clutched Sarah against her chest, the child finally sleeping after the traumatic day. The tarnished button caught the firelight, its official insignia a bitter reminder that in this conflict there could be no neutral ground, no peaceful passage. The machinery of conquest acknowledged no innocence. The survivors regrouped in a hidden box canyon 3 valleys away from the ambush site. For 2 days, stragglers trickled in, each arrival greeted with quiet relief, each absence increasingly acknowledged as permanent. Their band, once 40 strong, had been reduced to 26, including only 7 warriors. Pato aged visibly under the weight of their losses. On the 3rd evening he called council, inviting Beth to join an unusual honor for an outsider, particularly a woman. She sat at the edge of the circle, Sarah sleeping against her chest, as the elders deliberated their options in low voices. From her belt, Lu Yu produced a red clay pipe, its bowl carved with symbols Beth didn't recognize. The medicine woman packed it with a mixture of tobacco and herbs, then lit it with a coal from the small fire. After drawing deeply, she passed it ceremonially to her brother. Beth watched the pipe move around the circle, each person taking a ritual draw before speaking their thoughts. The formal procedure lent gravity to their desperate situation, civilization persisting amid chaos. When the pipe reached Beth, she hesitated, uncertain of the protocol. Lu Yu nodded encouragement. Beth carefully mimicked the other's actions, drawing smoke into her mouth without fully inhaling, then passing the pipe to the next person. The tobacco tasted different from that in her lost otterskin pouch, sharper, more aromatic. Through fragmented translation, Beth understood their dilemma, their planned route to the Great Salt Lake, where they hoped to reunite with Nantai and possibly Maka, was now crawling with military patrols. Alternative paths required crossing territories controlled by hostile tribes or white settlements. What about the Quakers? Beth suggested when her turn to speak came. All eyes turned to her with surprise. She explained haltingly about settlements of religious whites who opposed violence and had established peaceful relations with various tribes. Pato's expression showed skepticism, but Lu Yu spoke rapidly in support. After extended discussion, a tentative consensus emerged. They would attempt a long, circuitous route toward a rumored Quaker settlement near the Colorado Territory border. If successful, they might find sanctuary, or at least information about safe passage to the Great Salt Lake. The decision made, camp broke before dawn. They traveled cautiously, using every natural feature to conceal their movement. Beth found herself increasingly accepted within the group, her suggestion having offered direction when they most needed it. Sarah became a communal responsibility, passed between women when Beth needed rest, her cradle board decorated with protective symbols added by Luyu. 5 days into their new route, they reached a river junction, a planned rendezvous point where they hoped other scattered band members might find them. They established a temporary camp in a defensible position, posting sentries on surrounding high points. Beth had just settled Sarah for the night, when a sentry's low whistle signaled approach. Warriors moved silently into defensive positions, while women and children prepared for immediate evacuation. Beth clutched Sarah, heart pounding, as Pato and 2 warriors went to investigate. Tense minutes passed before they returned, with Nantai. The elder woman appeared thinner, exhausted, a crude bandage visible on her arm. Behind her came 2 Apache warriors from Maka's band, similarly travel-worn. Beth rushed forward, relief overwhelming protocol. "You're alive," she exclaimed, shifting Sarah to one arm so she could grasp Nantai's hand. "We feared. After the soldiers everywhere now," Nantai confirmed grimly. "Many battles, bad times." That evening, around a carefully shielded fire, Nantai shared their story as Luyu translated for the others. After separating from Beth's group, they had successfully drawn the bounty hunters south, eventually eliminating the threat. 2 hunters not returned to tell stories was Nantai's only elaboration on what must have been a violent confrontation. Their attempt to circle back toward the winter camp had been interrupted by military patrols engaged in a systematic campaign against all indigenous peoples in the region. "They burn villages," Nantai said, her usual stoicism cracking with anger. "Even empty ones. Destroy food stores, kill horses, and Maka?" Beth finally asked, the question she'd been holding since Nantai's arrival. Nantai and the warriors exchanged glances. "Alive, when we last saw," one warrior answered in halting English. "Fighting soldiers who attacked hunting party." "He sent us find you," Nantai added, "said meet at Great Water Lake, as planned." Her hand moved to her medicine pouch, the partner to the one Beth had lost. "I follow tobacco prayers, find you here instead." The revelation that Maka had specifically sent them to find her, and Sarah stirred emotions Beth wasn't prepared to examine. Before she could ask more questions, Pachi called for the council pipe again. This time, when the red clay pipe circled, both Apache and Bannock Shoshone drew from it, a formal alliance in the face of common threat. When the pipe reached Nantai, the elder woman took her draw, then spoke at length. Luyu translated for Beth. "Nantai says old boundaries between tribes matter no more. All indigenous people now face same enemy. Must stand together or fall alone." She paused, then added, "Says white woman and child now part of this fight too. No neutral ground left." Beth nodded solemnly, understanding the truth in these words. The tarnished brass button she'd kept from the ambush seemed to weigh heavily in her pocket, a reminder that the machinery of conquest made no distinctions in its advance. The red clay pipe completed its circle, sealing their pact of mutual protection. Tomorrow they would continue toward the rumored Quaker settlement, their numbers slightly strengthened, their resolve hardened by shared loss. As the council dispersed, Nantai approached Beth privately. From her pouch, she withdrew a small object wrapped in soft hide. Unwrapping it revealed a carved wooden figure, crude but recognizable as a man. "Maka made," Nantai explained. "For Sarah, said give when we find you." Beth accepted the carving, throat tight with emotion. The simple gift carried meaning beyond its rough craftsmanship, proof that even separated by violence and distance, they remained connected by bonds stronger than circumstance. Their journey to the Quaker settlement took 8 grueling days, longer than expected as they repeatedly diverted to avoid military patrols. Game proved scarce, their meager supplies dwindling, until hunger became a constant companion. Sarah grew fussy, Beth's milk diminishing despite Liu's herbal remedies. On the 9th morning, the scouts returned with unexpected news. They had located not just the rumored settlement, but an established community, with substantial buildings, cultivated fields, and a water-powered mill. The band approached cautiously, longing within the forest's edge to observe. The settlement appeared peaceful, men working fields, women hanging laundry, children playing under a schoolhouse awning. No weapons were visible. "How do we approach?" Beth asked, bouncing a hungry, irritable Sarah. "They might fear such a large group." Nentai and Pato conferred briefly. "You go first," Nentai decided. "White woman with baby. Less threatening." "I'll go with her," offered one of the Apache warriors, Yellow Fox, who spoke the best English. "Shall we come together?" "Not as enemies," Beth nodded, straightening her filthy dress as best she could. Sarah was secured in her cradleboard, the grass doll and Maka's carved figure tucked beside her. Together Beth and Yellow Fox walked from the forest edge toward the settlement, deliberately slow and visible. They were halfway across an open field when a man noticed them. He alerted others without alarm or panic. Several adults gathered, watching their approach with curiosity rather than fear. A tall, bearded man in simple clothing stepped forward to meet them. "Welcome, friends," he called, his tone genuinely warm. "I am Thomas Wetherell." "I'm Elizabeth Harrison," Beth replied, her unused formal name sounding strange to her ears. "This is Yellow Fox. We come with others, seeking temporary sanctuary." Thomas's eyes moved to Yellow Fox without hostility, then to the forest edge where the rest of their band waited. "All are welcome here if they come in peace," he said. "We hold no weapons and offer friendship to all God's children." Yellow Fox studied the man carefully before giving a slight nod. "We bring women, children, warriors for protection only. Need food, rest, maybe medicine." Thomas turned, gesturing to the others. "Rachel, please prepare the meeting house. Mary will need food for hungry travelers." To Beth and Yellow Fox, he said, "Please signal your people to join us. No one will harm you here." The Quaker settlement, Hope Valley, they learned, had been established 3 years earlier, specifically to provide neutral ground between indigenous peoples and white settlers. Its founders were committed to peaceful coexistence and had maintained good relations with several tribes through strict adherence to fair trading practices and respect for territorial boundaries. The community welcomed their unusual group with remarkable openness. The meeting house, a large central building used for worship and community gatherings, was quickly arranged with pallets and blankets. Food appeared within the hour, simple fare of bread, stewed vegetables, and smoked fish that nonetheless seemed a feast after days of near starvation. That evening, Sarah nestled against Beth on a real mattress for the first time in her young life, wrapped in a hand-stitched quilt provided by Rachel Wetherell, Thomas's wife. The colorful patchwork featured dozens of different fabrics, some rough-spun homemade cloth, others fine printed cottons, all pieced together in a harmonious pattern. "Every family contributes squares when they join our community," Rachel explained, running her hand over the varied textures. "Each piece carries its own history, yet together they create something stronger and more beautiful than any could alone." The simple metaphor wasn't lost on Beth. Her own life had become a patchwork of experiences: her educated upbringing, her betrayal and sale, her months with Maka's people, her time with the Bannock Shoshone band, disparate pieces now sewn into a single complex identity. The following days brought physical recovery and cultural adjustments for the entire band. The Quakers, true to their principles, made no attempts to convert or civilize their indigenous guests. instead engaging in genuine exchange of skills and knowledge. Pato's people shared hunting techniques and medicinal plants. Nantai demonstrated efficient hide-tanning methods. The Quakers offered carpentry skills and literacy lessons to those interested. Beth found herself in an unexpected role as bridge between worlds, translating not just language, but cultural concepts between groups. Children proved the easiest connections, Quaker and indigenous youth quickly forming friendships that transcended linguistic barriers. On the fifth evening, Thomas requested a council meeting with the band's leaders. Beth was again included, Sarah sleeping peacefully wrapped in the community quilt. "We've received troubling news," Thomas began gravely. "Military activities have increased throughout the territory. The commander at Fort Bridger has declared all indigenous people not on registered reservations to be hostile combatants." The implications settled heavily in the room. Pato spoke through Yellow Fox's translation. "What does this mean for those sheltering with friends like you?" Thomas's expression revealed his distress. "Officially, we're ordered to report any Indian presence to the military immediately. Of course, we will do no such thing." He straightened his shoulders. "Our community has unanimously agreed to offer you sanctuary for as long as needed, at risk to yourselves," Nantai observed. "We follow a higher authority than military commanders." Rachel replied simply. Later that night, unable to sleep despite comfortable surroundings, Beth sat by a window, fingers tracing the varied patterns of the quilt wrapped around her shoulder. Each square represented a family's story, each stitch a connection between previously separate lives. Outside, Nantai and Pato conversed quietly beneath starlight. Their bands had begun as strangers thrown together by circumstance. Now they functioned as a single community, their boundaries like the seams in the quilt, still visible but stronger for being joined. Beth touched the wooden carving from Maka, wondering where he was, if he still lived, if they would ever reunite. So many pieces of her heart, scattered across this vast, dangerous territory, like fragments of fabric waiting to be sewn into a pattern, not yet revealed. 3 weeks passed at Hope Valley, a respite of relative peace amid the territory's escalating conflicts. Beth settled into a routine, helping with communal cooking, teaching basic reading to interested tribal members, watching Sarah thrive in the stable environment. The Quakers treated her not as a curiosity but as a respected equal, while Nantai and the others included her without question in their councils and ceremonies. This precarious harmony shattered at dawn, when a scout rushed into the settlement with alarming news, a military patrol approaching from the east, less than 2 hours away. The community mobilized immediately, hidden root cellars and concealed storage rooms, preparations the peaceful Quakers had hoped never to need, were quickly readied to hide their indigenous guests. Beth worked alongside the others, heart racing with now familiar fear. Thomas found her as she helped Luyu move medicinal supplies. "Elizabeth," he said quietly, using the formal name she'd nearly forgotten, "may I speak with you privately?" In his simple office, Thomas closed the door before speaking. "The patrol leader is Captain James Hayward. He's known for his thoroughness." The hesitation conveyed volumes about the captain's reputation. "If they search extensively, they will find evidence of our guests." Beth nodded, understanding the implicit danger. "Rachel and I have discussed this," Thomas continued. "We believe you should remain visible during their visit." With Sarah, the strategy was clear. Beth's presence as an obviously white woman with her child might divert suspicion, suggesting the settlement harbored no Indian sympathizers. "You're asking me to hide who I've become," Beth said, surprising herself with the immediate resistance she felt. Thomas studied her thoughtfully. "I'm asking you to protect those you love through temporary concealment, not unlike our guests hiding in root cellars." The gentle correction humbled her. "Of course, I'll do whatever helps." Thomas hesitated again. "There's more. Captain Hayward commands the regional forces. He maintains regular communication with Eastern Territories." His kind eyes held hers. "If you wish to return to your former life, he could arrange safe passage east." The unexpected suggestion struck Beth like physical blow. Return east, to what? Here, her teaching position was long gone, her reputation destroyed by pregnancy out of wedlock. Yet the possibility of safety, of conventional society for Sarah, of education and opportunities beyond frontier survival. I don't expect an immediate answer, Thomas said, noting her confusion. But consider it, a child deserves stability. The military patrol arrived before noon, 12 mounted soldiers led by a stern-faced captain. Thomas met them in the settlement's central clearing, his manner friendly but reserved. Beth stood on the meeting house porch, wearing a borrowed dress, her hair properly arranged beneath a Quaker cap, Sarah in her arms, similarly transformed by clean clothes. She felt like an imposter in this costume of her former life. Captain Hayward dismounted, his assessing gaze sweeping the settlement before settling on Beth, with poorly disguised interest. "Ma'am," he acknowledged with a slight bow. The inspection proceeded with tense formality. Soldiers checked out buildings while Thomas provided a tour of their main facilities. When the captain requested refreshment, Beth found herself serving coffee in the meeting house, acutely aware of the tribal members hidden beneath the very floorboards. "Miss Harrison is recently widowed," Thomas explained when the captain inquired about Beth's circumstances. "She's considering whether to remain with our community or return east to her family." Captain Hayward's expression softened marginally. "These territories are no place for a woman alone with a child, especially now." He straightened. "If you decide to return east, I'd be pleased to arrange military escort to Fort Laramie. From there, regular coaches can take you to Chicago." "You're very kind," Beth managed, the words feeling foreign in her mouth. That evening, after the patrol departed, having found nothing despite their thorough search, the hidden guests emerged. The near miss had shaken everyone, the Quakers and tribal members alike, sobered by how quickly their sanctuary could be compromised. Nantai found Beth sitting alone on the meeting house steps, after most had retired. Without speaking, the elder woman settled beside her, their shoulders touching in companionable silence. Finally, Beth voiced the question tormenting her. Would Sarah have a better life if I took the captain's offer? Education, safety, society. Nantai considered before answering. Better is not always easier. Safer is not always truer. She touched Sarah's sleeping head gently. This child walks between worlds already. No paper document changes that. From her medicine pouch, Nantai withdrew an object that caught the moonlight, a silver dollar mounted on a leather cord, Marker's trading coin. Beth whispered, recognizing the dollar that had purchased her at the auction block. Nantai nodded. "He kept all this time, asked me give to Sarah if..." She didn't finish the thought. Not ownership token, freedom token. Reminder that small things change big destinies. Beth accepted the makeshift pendant, its weight familiar yet transformed. Once a symbol of her commodification, now reimagined as a talisman of liberation and choice. "The band leaves tomorrow," Nantai said after another comfortable silence. "Too dangerous, stay longer. Shoshone cousins send message. Marker, seen at Great Salt Lake, still lives, still waits." The news sent a surge through Beth's heart that she could no longer pretend was merely relief. "And you, will you go to him?" "We go. Question is, you come too." Nantai's weathered hand covered Beth's. "Not easy path, not safe path, but your path, if you choose." Dawn found Beth at the settlement's edge, Sarah secured in her cradleboard. She had shed the borrowed Quaker dress, returning to the practical buckskin clothing she'd come to prefer. Around Sarah's neck hung the silver dollar pendant, no longer currency of ownership, but legacy of transformation. Thomas and Rachel stood nearby, their expressions showing understanding rather than judgment. "You're certain?" Rachel asked gently. Beth nodded, watching the tribal members making final preparations to depart. "My life is with them now, Sarah's too." She touched the quilt Rachel had pressed upon her as a parting gift. "Different pieces, one pattern. You'll always have sanctuary here, Thomas assured her, should you ever need it. As they prepared to depart, Yellow Fox approached with news. Scouts had spotted a lone rider approaching from the west. Not military. Apache. Beth's heart quickened. She moved to the settlement's western edge, searching the horizon. A single mounted figure gradually took form against the morning sun, its silhouette achingly familiar despite the distance. The silver dollar rested against Sarah's chest as Beth stepped forward, away from the settlement's safety, toward the wilderness and the approaching ride. Not a return to her past, but a conscious step into a future of her own choosing. Complex, dangerous, but authentically hers.